It's Nancy with Garden Grow. I have a new iris blooming. Isn't that pretty? Look at that blend of color. Just look at these beautiful poppy buds. Pretty soon they'll open up and I'll see what color they are, because this was from a seed that I planted last year, and I don't remember, of course, what color it was. And I've got a couple more coming up here. This one's got a tiny little bud on it, but these will be opening really soon. Here's another surprise I found yesterday in the garden. This beautiful Atoth, A-T-O-H, lily is blooming, or peony is blooming. My Cinco de Mayo lily is blooming. Maybe they call it that because it blooms right around May the 5th. It's looking good. And also I got a new trellis, this one right here. This clematis was just kind of all bunched up on that little small, well, it's actually like this little table with a kind of a trellis going up it, which worked good for a while, but it's just kind of outgrowing that. Plus my table got destroyed, at least the top part of it did. So I'm going to try that and see. I think that's going to be all right there, actually. I wish I would have got it there while the flowers were still blooming. There's one little lone bloom right down there, but there were several on it that could have showed off up this trellis if I would have got it put up there in time, but I didn't, so just have to enjoy it next year. And this is another new bloom in the garden. I think this may have bloomed once last year, but it's looking so pretty today. I did notice this one yesterday too. Oh look, the ghost honeysuckle is blooming. I forgot that it even did a bloom. This little, whatever you call these little things that come up on it, are so pretty even without it, just this little rounded green thing that comes up on them, but they're pretty with the bloom also. And over here by these beautiful peonies is a pretty yellow rose. May the 15th, 2019. What's blooming in the garden? Peonies are blooming. Some of my peonies have gone away for the season, but lots are still blooming. Catmint is blooming. Roses are blooming. Irises are blooming. My little bush clematis is blooming. Dianthus are blooming. The pretty little bacopa blooms are shining for me also. More dianthus blooms. The impatiens are blooming too. They may be little, but they are mighty when you put very many of them there, or you don't even have to have very many. The color just actually jumps right out at you. It's in the sunlight, so I'm not going to get the color real well there, but you can see there how pretty that pretty creamsicle orange is. I see some calabrachoa blooms over there too. My poppy is blooming. So now we know what color it is. It's a beautiful soft salmon pink. Sweet William are blooming. And here's some more calabrachoa blooms. And some more of the pretty little bacopa. This is the white bacopa blooming. A little closer up on this pretty calabrachoa or mini petunia here. Isn't that a pretty color? And this is new to my garden. I got this pretty little fuchsia. This is an annual fuchsia, and it won't last long out here. It doesn't like the hot weather. I did put it in this little pot thinking I may be able to bring it inside during the hottest weather and see if I can bring it back out in the fall. These little peonies that were so late in blooming are blooming today and looking good. They did get nipped by the wet weather and didn't open up quite as early as they needed to avoid some of this. But even at that, when they open fully, you can tell they're still beautiful. Pretty pink Sweet William is blooming in this pot this morning. I have another rose here that's blooming, and I think this one is called Hot Chocolate. This little peony bloom is still looking good. And there's a little geranium bloom. Look at this pretty double petunia bloom. Isn't that gorgeous? I wish that would fill out and just bloom by the handsfuls. Some of the columbine is still blooming, although it is going away slowly. And then over here is another rose bush blooming for me, and this is the Cinco de Mayo rose. Amaryllis and those pretty peach roses in bloom. This pretty little pink rose is pretty much in bloom. And then right there beside it is the red knockout rose, which is just beginning to bloom. There's one of them. And more of the almost thornless roses are opened up today. This tiny little peony only has one bloom, but look at that bloom. And I have my gloves on today. I'm fixing to do some more planting. The last of the things I ordered came in, so I've got to plant that today. Isn't that a pretty color? Kind of a salmon pink. This little rose is blooming pretty today. It's a lot more of it has opened up. Going up the trellis. One day it'll probably be all the way up to the top. And then there's more columbine blooms. And here's some more of the orangey blooms, which I must be attracted to since I have at least 3 different shades of the orange. One of the things I'm going to plant today is called a climbing lemon butter rose. But it looks like it may be a grafted in rose, which for me, I found in Oklahoma, they don't do so well because they usually go back to the whatever old rose that it was grafted onto when it gets cold. cold. It freezes out the top part, but we'll see how it will do. Look at these beautiful strawberry blonde. I always want to say big blonde. There's a coleus named Big Blonde that I get it mixed up with, but these are strawberry blonde, and if you'll remember, they were like a bright deep red when it was cooler and it was overcast. Now they're like a bright orange. And they will actually go back into a soft yellow at some point. Just kind of ever changing. Makes it nice. This is one of my roses that I had planted before on a grafted in rose, and it's called Ebb Tide, and it went back to the old rose. So this one is its own root. It's a smaller rose, but it will totally be worth it to start it smaller if I can be able to keep the color that I actually ordered on it, which they're all pretty, but I want different kinds. I don't want just all the same color rose in my garden. This little single rose is all bloomed out this morning and looking great. There's a little closer shot of the Cinco de Mayo rose. And I did get a trellis. I got this at Hobby Lobby, and so I could put this up on it. It was just all laid out on the floor, and now it looks better. I'll still have to keep it wrapped around this little trellis because this clematis is actually taller than the trellis otherwise. And there's a pretty little red rose over here that's blooming today. The little Siberian iris that was here went away. It has faded and spent, but we have another one that came up right beside it, right where the other one was. It's looking so good. And I see we have a little pale purple one here too this morning. This little rose is called a bullseye. I think it's really pretty. And I don't know what kind of bush this is, but my brother gave my mother one that he got her from a florist, and she put it outside and it just did great. And she says that these little blooms bring the butterflies just clustering on it. So I thought, yes, I would like to have one of those. So I hope it's a good idea. It's a pretty little tree. I don't know if you can tell much from this angle, but this little row is looking good right now too. The peonies, and there's daylilies in between, which of course are not in bloom right now, but the peonies are just beautiful. And then we're down to the other end where the globe flower golden carria is. So there's several peonies there, and then the blackberry here on the end. And the hardy geraniums are blooming. The blue anchusa is blooming. And this one that I told you was laying down, I did put some eliminator granules on there, hoping that if it was roly-polies, which it probably was, that made it lay over. I found that to be one of my biggest challenges, is to deal with those things. But they will certainly take something down and even out before you realize it. This, of course, is little white alyssum, and you can see the little pink verbena trying to compete with it there. I had to think of my brother today because it would have been his birthday. So he's having a heavenly birthday. Happy birthday, Willie. I love you. He told me one time, he said, "Sis, you have a beautiful backyard. Just look at all this. It's more work than anybody should have to do." So I remember that a lot. It was the truth too. Sometimes I feel it is way more work than I can get done. It's never all done, never all deadheaded, and I struggle to keep it watered in the summertime, although I do my part to try to keep it watered. I'm usually out here every single day hoping it will rain so I can take a break, but so far it's been worth it to me. It's beautiful, and I had my cousin and his wife came over yesterday. I met them downtown unexpectedly. Oh, look at this beautiful pink. It's such a pretty baby pink, and that's what it was said about it when I ordered it, and it certainly has not disappointed. But anyway, I had them out here and they just oohed and awed and said it was the most beautiful garden they'd ever seen. So that made me feel good, of course. And I think they enjoyed it. I enjoyed them being here. This is not blooming, of course. I don't think it does bloom. It may. But this is a 9-bark, and I saw one at Sunshine Nursery, which made me want one. This is much smaller than the one they had for sale, but it also cost me less, and it will grow. So in this beautiful color of it, it's just so pretty, and when the sun catches it, it just pretty much dances with kind of the fall colors in bright sunlight. This is a new little plant that I just planted yesterday, or no, actually it was the day before yesterday, I believe. But it is a Virginia. It's called Pig Squeak. So it's supposed to be pink, and I have some in blue that I just thought this was pretty too, and just that name, of course, kind of got me. My autumn fern is still trying. I know most people would say what a scraggly looking little thing, but to me it looks big and beautiful because all my other ones have died out. I have one fern back behind this pot right here that's still struggling along too. It's supposed to be a ostrich fern, but whether it ever gets big enough for me to climb it to be, I don't know, but maybe it will. It's hard to tell. If you can keep them alive, there's just no telling what they'll eventually end up doing to show off for you. Oh, and I see over here the pretty dark clematis that I was telling you I love so much is coming all the way up the trellis. All the way to there. Isn't that pretty? There's my little ostrich fern. So maybe someday it will be. And these little ones, these little pink ones are called evening primrose. Are they evening primrose or just... Anyway, they're a primrose. I can't remember if they're evening primrose, but they pretty much are a ground cover, and they just keep going if you let them. Of course, I have this weed control fabric here, which is wonderful because several times in my lifetime I've had to get out here on my knees and just pull and pull and pull those little not clover, but the little purple topped weeds out of here. And so I finally got this down here where it's not that kind of a job every spring. All this little sedum you see was in that bottom pot at one time. It didn't live in the pot, but it jumped out and just went all over around the bottom, so I'm leaving it there. I told my little therapist, Bailey, that the peonies would be as big as her face, and then when I took them to her, it was a damp day and I was afraid they were all going to just be destroyed. So I went ahead and took them to her anyway, and they looked more like these back here, all folded on themselves. But here you go, Bailey. There's one big as your face. You can tell the rains kind of made this one turn brown too soon too, but oh, these are the most beautiful white. They do have a little bit of color, a little bit of a red color sometimes in them, but I never knew I would love a white peony as much as I do. They just show off for me when they bloom, and I just can't help but ooh and ah over them. And this little rose is blooming. Look at this. This is the Henry clematis, and it is the biggest clematis that I have and that I've seen. It is so pretty. While we're talking about white, we'll definitely go there. And this is another one of my orangey single roses. Isn't it pretty? I love that color. Kind of like it's soft and vibrant at the same time. Here's another pretty little clematis bloom. Some more of the pretty pink roses are blooming. This little peony is a favorite for me too. I love that little fluffy center and the colors, the yellow and magenta coloring together. I don't know if this will show as pretty in the picture as it does right here, but it's catching the sun just right to just totally show off. My little miniature rose is blooming. And it won't be very long till this pretty little, the President, is blooming. It may be blooming for Mother's Day. It usually is. The Jupiter's Beard or Heaven's Gates plant is also blooming. Quite a little grouping of it right here. And I did read that hummingbirds also like these, which kind of surprised me. I don't remember seeing them around it, but I'm sure that it's true. And I knew that butterflies do. This tiny little flower, anything with tiny little flowers, and the butterflies just totally go for that. But also you can clip these off and they'll come back again, keep blooming. I also redid this little succulent pot. There was only two things, and that was this one right here, this red sedum, and one other thing. What was the other thing that lived in here? Well, maybe there was only one thing because all this other I put in here, but these are like rock rose, or I've heard it called the dew plant also, in yellow, and of course in orange. This one's blooming some right here, and then just put some more succulents in there, and I'm thinking they'll probably fill this whole thing out by the end of the season or before. Pretty little petunias.